If it's one thing that I pride myself on with this channel, it's the ability to call out the actual bad behavior of video game companies, whether it's Xbox, PlayStation, Nvidia, AMD, and dare I say even Nintendo. Unfortunately, though, there have been people who have, for some reason, been trying to say that what I've been doing is a terrible thing and having to be a really bad idea overall. It's crazy how when you criticize a company that someone devotes their entire life to, or even online personality, they tend to get a little bit upset, dare I say. But the thing is, the criticism is in fact warranted, especially for Nintendo. We've talked about so many things they've done this simple generation where they could have had the easiest W basically ever, having game key cards and not providing proper amounts of data storage for developers, going around and actually bricking actual systems simply because people decided to go ahead and break the rules Nintendo wanted to strangely impose, and so many other things as well. And if that wasn't bad enough to put the cherry on top, we even have our own Nintendo fanboy trying to call me out, saying that I was starting a boycott for the Switch 2? Well, this is going to be one hell of a video. Buckle up, baby! Here we go! According to Go Nintendo tweet, it turns out that Japan's National Diet Library says that Switch 2 game keycards aren't eligible for preservation. Can we talk about game preservation for a second, by the way? Honestly, Nintendo, in my opinion, is the actual worst company in terms of game preservation. Not only do they not provide proper ways of you going through and cataloging your games and bringing them forward to every other generation moving forward, because they constantly change the type of format or they don't provide any real way of backwards compatibility, they're also the same company that goes around and shuts down massive emulation and ROM sites, even though they could simply just put their games on other platforms available for sale and for purchase. I'm sorry, if you put any Nintendo game onto the PC platform, they're going to make tons of money, the game is going to be preserved, and it will be available for use and purchase for every other person to use. The device the game plays on, in my opinion today, is especially irrelevant. And the thing is, talking about game preservation, it also does correlate to piracy, and piracy is the truest form of game preservation. You don't have any sort of disk erosion, you can go ahead and copy all the games that you need to, and you own that copy digitally for life as long as you have it viable on a thumbstick or a hard drive. And people confuse that all the time. It's not about wanting to go through and just steal video games. It's the fact that right now you always see those giant walls of virginity behind people all the time. All that huge row of red or blue or green behind them of all the games they bought, but they don't actually even own them. The discs are empty or they're just coasters. At the same time, the cartridges don't even have the full game on the disc. But the thing is, when you're actually able to go through and preserve a game properly, that's always a good thing. And the National Diet Library in Japan kind of sees it the exact same way. In an article translated by Automaton, it says this: Nintendo Switch 2 game keycards are not eligible for preservation by Japan's National Diet Library, officials say. Storing over 9,600 Japanese video games in proper archival conditions, the National Diet Library is a key institution for domestic game preservation. Game preservation is incredibly important, like I said earlier before, and the fact that the Diet Library is beginning to do this recently is also a good thing. The fact that Nintendo has gone around and they are no longer providing a proper way of buying older games, especially their previous library, even if you're trying to talk about the actual amount of IP that's being used as well, it really doesn't bode well for anyone trying to go back and find those older titles. Unless you sign up to a really terrible online service or you go through a third-party seller like eBay, you're going to get put hand over fist over a barrel, and it's going to be a horrible experience overall. But you know what? Let's continue and see what actually happened. The National Diet Library, NDL, says that games released on the Nintendo Switch 2 game keycards will not be eligible for preservation. Source: Famitsu. The NDL is one of the largest libraries in the world, and it's also Japan's only legal deposit library, meaning that it mandates domestic publishers to submit copies of all new publications for collection and preservation purposes. As of October 2000, the library started housing media such as video game CDs and cartridges in proper archival conditions, becoming the key institution for preservation of Japanese games. Currently, NDL possesses over 9,600 video game titles, including most titles published domestically since October of 2000. only physical releases, and sometimes published prior collected via donations. When asked about the Switch 2 game keycards, the NDO representatives say that only physical media that contains the content itself is considered eligible for preservation. Since a keycard on its own does not qualify as content, it falls outside of the scope for collection and preservation. And this right here, in my opinion, is Nintendo's biggest L this entire generation. Sticking to game keycards and not giving developers and publishers a cheaper option with a smaller storage space is one of the biggest reasons why you have game keycards in the first place. We saw it with that rumor specifically. You either buy the 64 gigabyte cart, you get the game keycard, or you forego all of that and you do the online digital download only, which really is honestly kind of stupid. Why are you going to manufacture a box with the actual artwork and then a fake keycard just to go through and give somebody nothing in the first place, nothing tangible or physical? And I know what people are going to say immediately off the bat in the comment section. You don't even have a Switch. You never wanted to buy a Switch 2 in the first place. Brother, look, I literally have a Switch right here, man. Like, this is literally my Switch. And like, here are some of the games I've gotten it. Look, like, come on. What are we talking about here, bro? Like this is the stupidest thing ever. I would have bought a Switch 2, absolutely, if it was fully backwards compatible and didn't deal with all the other bullshit they were doing. But Nintendo kept fucking everything up and screwing everything overall. And that's the biggest problem. When a company continually goes through and does the worst possible things to you as a consumer, you should in fact stand up for your own consumer rights. This shouldn't be like a surprise or like a big thing. Whoa, hold on. Alex has a span? Who could have believed it? Yeah, surprise. The article continues by saying this: as keycards merely serve as a key for downloading a game to your console via the internet, the library is essentially treating them the same as digital-only releases. At the same time, contrary to regular releases, games stored on keycards require you to insert the keycard into your Switch 2 each time you play, as per Nintendo, meaning that the physical aspect of them is not zero either, despite the game data not actually being stored on them. This, of course, to me, leads back to one thing and one thing only Nintendo has been doing with the Switch 2 that they didn't do with the Switch 1, and that is exerting control. I think, my opinion, is that they went through and they saw what happened with the Switch 1, how it was cracked immediately. They saw how they were going around and getting their games put online and on websites to go ahead and download and be pirated. And they have exerted way more control and way more force in the industry because of these practices and what they feel is inappropriate for you to do with the product that you purchase, or even just the fact that games are being pirated online. And that's basically what I think it all boils down to. Again, it is all about the fact of control. Nintendo is trying to control your actual device. Oh, you're going to use a MIG switch? Guess what? We're going to brick the actual fucking console, not actually close your account so you can still buy products because we want you to spend the money, but you're going to go ahead and buy another console instead, even though that Switch 2 is now effectively a brick because it cannot go online. Oh, you wanted to download this video game and have a game key card and you want a physical copy of the game? Well, what we're going to do is restrict and control what actual types of cartridges that developers can have, and they have to pay us more money for that, so that way we can control who has the game, who doesn't have the game, and how much money we get in from every developer and publisher, and also from every kind of person who buys the product. Oh, was a Switch 2 too much money for you? Just go ahead and buy a Switch 1. But at the same time, we're going to go ahead and raise the price of the Switch 1 to be even more expensive than it was 7 years ago, even though it should have had a price drop already, and then make it even more attractive to buy Switch 2 instead. So you can go ahead and brick that one and then buy another Switch 2 because we're going to lock you off from being online because you called yourself Twink Link. That's what I'm talking about. This isn't about Nintendo trying to go ahead and provide you what's best for the consumer or the customer. It's about exerting control. And if you don't believe me, over the past couple of days at Gamescom, it turns out that developers are not getting access to Switch 2 dev kits. I wonder why. According to Yeet on Twitter, shout out to the homie, he says Digital Foundry talks about the dilemma they heard about from devs at Gamescom surrounding Switch 2 dev kits. Quote, Nintendo seems to be almost discouraging Switch 2 development to some degree. A lot of devs want to ship on Switch 2 and can't get the hardware.
There's been a lot of talk about this lately, that Nintendo seems to be almost discouraging Switch 2 development to some degree, where I've spoken with plenty of developers where they were either told that their game, they should just ship it on Switch 1 and rely on backwards compatibility. There's a lot of developers that are unable to get Switch 2 dev kits. We talked to a lot of devs at Gamescom this year, and so many of them said the same things. They want to ship on Switch 2. They would love to do Switch 2 versions. They can't get the hardware. It's really difficult right now. So Oliver, do you think this would have made a difference for the console, as Chris James asks, if they would have been able to get, do you think Nintendo regrets not getting more kits out there earlier?
I mean, I think they should, but I don't really know what Nintendo's mindset was with these sets of decisions.
Right.
So I don't really understand the strategy because, like you said, even now developers are struggling to get systems. And I know that some months ago when we were, hearing things through the grapevine and talking to people, there were some weird exclusions with some big developers struggling to get kits for games. From what we've heard, and there were some kind of weird inclusions as well, like some indies were included, which is nice to see, but like there's that campfire game, the kind of camera campfire game, and they're getting kits, and some big developers on the other hand who develop like AAA stuff aren't necessarily in the pipeline there for kits.
Do you believe me now? Can you understand why it's about control now? Have you figured it all out yet already? Nintendo is completely overexerting their force and their restrictions, not only onto you as a consumer by controlling what your device can do, what you can do with your device, or even the kinds of cartridges you buy for your games. They're also not trying to control developers directly, and that is a massive issue overall. That is a direct impact on you as a Nintendo consumer, because the kinds of games you want to play, the fact that the Switch 2 is finally even somewhat capable of playing games, let's not talk about Elden Ring though, by the way, yikes, goes to show that so many other third-party developers are ready to put their games onto that platform, but cannot get the actual development kits to make those games on that platform. Why is Nintendo restricting who can and cannot make games for their console? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. If you got a console selling millions of units in the first couple of weeks, if you got people saying, hey, your boycott didn't work, we'll talk about that in a moment, and we've got everybody talking about how great the Switch 2 is, how much money they spent on it, why are you as a publisher and developer not wanting to put your game on there? And Nintendo is telling you, no, that's a ridiculous concept overall. Again, it goes back to control, and that is what Nintendo is trying to do. Control every single aspect from soup to nuts about this console, and that is going to negatively impact them in the long run, is my guess. It'll hurt you because you won't have the games you want to play. It'll hurt you because you don't have the way you want to play those games available to you. It'll hurt you because you'll be having your consoles bricked, and that is why I am so critical of this. Because it's not the fact that Nintendo is doing it, it's the fact that Nintendo does it, and so many other developers, publishers, and even console manufacturers and hardware makers will follow suit, because if Nintendo gets away with it, then they feel they can do it too. If you don't believe me, that is why people like Xbox and Microsoft were going around and charging $80 for video games until they saw the backlash that happened and they realized, oh, we can't do it. But that's not going to stop every other publisher, developer, or even hardware manufacturer to increase the cost of their products, which you've already seen right now, to increase the cost of their games, which you're seeing right now as well, simply because one person in the field does it. And that's the actual issue. That's where all this criticism comes from. Nintendo's overexertion on control is exactly why the gaming space is effectively getting worse, simply because people will follow what the other one is doing, and they'll go through and do it gleefully, because if one person accepts it, then they feel everybody else will accept it. And with all that being said, there are still people trying to criticize me about my actual criticism of Nintendo. Shall we get to Nintendo Prime? I think we shall. You see, Nintendo Prime made a video called This, Why the Nintendo Switch 2 Boycott Failed. And I don't know about you or me, but I don't remember there being any kind of boycott at all. All people were doing was calling out Nintendo on their bad business practices and letting everybody know what that console manufacturer was in fact doing and how this could negatively impact the industry overall. Yet for some reason, Primey over here decided to go through and start name-calling people and talking about how we failed on our Switch 2 boycott, even though it's one of the most ridiculous videos I've actually ever heard. Let's take a look at it, shall we?
So I want to talk about the Nintendo Switch 2 boycott and why, at least at this point, it has failed. And if you're confused, then I don't blame you, because for a lot of people out there, maybe even people watching this channel, you didn't even realize there was a boycott going on for Switch 2. It's pretty wild, actually, to think about how much I'm aware of this attempted boycott of Nintendo Switch 2 and thus Nintendo themselves, and how little some people were aware of it.
Already we are off to a raucous start. Primey, there was no Switch 2 boycott. People were just upset at the inability of Nintendo to actually, for once, I don't know, do the right thing and be pro-consumer. People were literally voicing their concerns at a company that they loved for a very long amount of time, doing things that were literally crossing the line for them as consumers in general, not offering them the right ability to purchase the product, locking devices out, and of course controlling everything from beginning to end. And on top of that, to increase the price on not only the previous gen consoles, but also any future games with variable pricing, meaning that if they feel that there is enough hype behind a game, they will literally jack up the price. We saw this happen with things like Uber doing that exact same thing. But hey, you know what? You don't know anything about any of that now, do you? You're just happy to be here and happy to be a Nintendo fan. So of course, Nintendo Prime goes off an entire tirade talking about how the Switch 2 boycott failed because for whatever particular reason, he feels like there are leaders in a boycott. I don't really know. And then he decides to go ahead and name drop some people. And guess who was mentioned?
But then you think some of the other ones, some of the more nuanced ones out there. You think of some of the content creators leading the charge. People like, oh no, it's Alex. He literally was never going to buy a Switch 2 regardless. He doesn't really play Switch either. Everything he plays is on PC. So he wasn't going to buy the system regardless of what happened, right? So that's not someone that's great to lead the charge because you can't boycott something you weren't planning to buy anyways. You're not affecting anything.
Imagine being this absolute on a daily basis. Ah, yes, because Alex was apparently never going to buy a Switch 2, even though in practically every Switch 2 video I've made, I've talked about how I plan to buy a Switch 2 because of the fact that it seemed to be like a good device, but because of Nintendo's practices, I chose not to buy a Switch 2. You see how that works? It's not like I'm Mudahar over here saying everything is bad, then going out and doing a 180 backflip and a twist into a pretzel, and then buying the device and having to do an apology video. No, that's not what happened. I stuck to my guns. I am a consumer with a spine, Primey. That's the big difference. In fact, again, I have a Switch OLED. I have Switch 1 games. Do I have to, like, what else do I got to do to prove it to you, you fucking clown? Oh, is that not enough for you? I'm sorry, I don't have a giant wall of virginity behind me. Do you want to see if, like, the games are in the case? Oh, look, it's there. Whoa, he was never gonna buy it. He's just a PC guy. Yeah, I like gaming on PC. Yeah, I emulate Switch games on my PC, but that doesn't mean I'm not gonna buy the game as well because I also like to play on the actual hardware. And I would have bought a Switch fucking 2 if Nintendo didn't fuck me every time I wanted to go ahead and give them money. You see why I'm angry? You see why I have a problem? It's kind of why I stopped buying Nvidia products because they did the same thing. So I went to AMD instead. Instead of actually just going around and just bending over for a corporation, I decided to take my money where it belongs, where it's going to be respected. And that's the difference between you and me, my boy. I'm not here to be happy. I'm here to actually get my money's worth out of the product. And if the product isn't worth my money, then I'll get it.
So we got to go to other people out there that were maybe planning to get it. Maybe someone like Nintendine. He's another content creator, but he really wasn't spearheading the boycott stuff from the very beginning. So yes, he is a Nintendo fan who loved Switch, bought Switch, owned all the games. That's actually an example of somebody who could potentially have been a leader for the movement, but I don't feel like he in particular wants to step up in that regard. Then you have other people like Fratanga Plays. You have other people out there like smaller content creators. You have lots of people on Reddit and Twitter, lots of people that were pushing for this boycott. But the problem, a fundamental issue is all of the leadership behind this movement was disjointed, unorganized, and nobody was really working together.
Oh, honey. Oh, honey, you fucked up. Oh, you messed up bad. You think I'm an asshole? You think I'm a problem? Oh, when Fratanga sees this. I just love it. Like, you're literally making up your own headcanon right now in your own space. Nintendine would have been a good leader of the boycott, but yeah, and Fratanga is just a jerk. Alex is an asshole. Mudahar bought a Switch too, but the boycott didn't work. There was no boycott. It's a group of people on YouTube who are just pissed off about Nintendo and the bullshit that they're doing, and they're using their platform to be pro-consumer and let their actual viewers know what is in fact happening and letting their viewers choose for themselves what they can and cannot do. But the thing is, people like myself, Nintendine, Frittata Plays, and in some weird way even Mutahar, were simply just trying to voice the concerns of a company that we've honestly enjoyed for a very long time and wanted to buy their product for, but because the stupidity of that company is so great, we've chosen not to, and to dictate our distaste and disapproval of what Nintendo is doing. You see, you are a dedicated Nintendo channel, and the difference is what you want to do is not involve yourself in any other controversy whatsoever. You just want to go ahead and suck off the company and corporation, lick the boot from top to bottom, bottom to top, as they actually say. That is what you're doing, my boy. In fact, you even admit it yourself that the only reason you made this video is because you got angry that other people were putting you in their content. Don't believe me?
With the boycott, it ain't going anywhere. And yelling at them and mocking them, and let's just be frank, mocking me isn't really going to do anything. I said this at the time on a live stream that they were going about this all wrong. I actually don't like Nintendo's policies. I don't like the price points. I actually agree with a lot of the criticism. However, I am willing to put up with enough of this stuff at this point to still enjoy the product. For a movement to work, you need people to feel like they've hit that breaking point. And some of you have, and there are definitely some Nintendo fans that hit that breaking point. But is this enough that that breaking point was really widespread? So far, the answer is no. So the Switch 2 boycott failed because there probably really wasn't a boycott to begin with.
And there it is. It couldn't be any clearer from everything being seen. The fact that Nintendo Prime has admitted to you and everybody else, even in his own video, that he'd rather lay down like a dog for a corporation than stick up for himself simply is the most embarrassing thing of all. It's not the fact that me, Frittanga, Nintendine, even Mutahar in some cases, were trying to do a boycott, because that's not what we were doing. We were trying to use our platform and our voices to go ahead and let people know and make an educated buying decision about what consumer rights are being violated by Nintendo to you as a customer and consumer, and all the ways Nintendo is trying to fuck over the actual customer and control everything from front to back. This video shows that directly and clearly. I showed how Nintendo is controlling the actual media itself, the games themselves, by only offering game keycards for specific titles unless developers and publishers actually pay. And now they're controlling your own devices by bricking them because you broke some weird arbitrary rule that they didn't like. And instead of actually going through and calling this company out, which I'm going to be real, you made a couple of tweets here and there. Sure, that's not a big deal about that. But the thing is, your consistent message has been you're willing to put up with it. And what's going to happen is the more you do, the more they're going to push. And when they finally cross the line that you're not willing to put up with, it's going to be too far and too late. And by that time, it's already over, my boy. You could have had the criticism. You could have defended yourself as a consumer and customer, but instead you chose to lick the corporate boot. So I hope you enjoy the space that you're in. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen, if you liked today's video, thank you. And if you didn't like it, fuck you. If you want to see more of this kind of content, more PC port reviews, gaming news, Steam Deck videos, hot takes in the gaming industry, and fanboy content, subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 91,000 subs, and I just got to say thank you guys so very much. It's honestly insane. I can't believe I'm even saying that right now. But if you want Discord access and emotes during live streams, become a YouTube member. It's as low as $1. If you don't want to spend the buck, don't sweat it. Come on down Saturday nights, 8:45 p.m. Eastern, live right here on the channel, where the live streams I do are absolutely insane. Trust me, you don't want to miss them, as I get insulted with AI TTS for about 4.5 to 5 hours while wearing a banana suit. It's a hell of a show. Saturday nights, 8:45 p.m. Eastern. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. With all that being said, though, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a great one, and I'll see you gooners next time. Peace!